Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled at the edge of a lush forest, there lived a sweet little girl known far and wide for her vibrant red cloak. The villagers affectionately called her Little Red Riding Hood, and her kind heart and cheerful spirit brought joy to all who knew her. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother, who lived deep in the woods, had fallen ill, concerned for her beloved grandma's well-being. The young girl's mother decided to send her on a mission of love and care. She packed a basket full of warm, freshly baked bread, sweet honey, and a jar of homemade jam, all of Grandma's favorites. Before Little Red Riding Hood set off on her journey, her mother pulled her close and spoke softly. "My dear child, remember to stay on the path and don't dawdle. The forest can be dangerous, so be swift and careful." The little girl nodded solemnly, promising to heed her mother's words. With a spring in her step and her basket swinging gently by her side, Little Red Riding Hood entered the cool shade of the forest. Sunlight dappled the path before her, and birds sang sweetly from the branches overhead. The girl's heart was light as she thought of surprising her grandmother with the delicious treats. As she walked along, Little Red Riding Hood couldn't help but notice the beauty of the forest around her. Colourful wildflowers dotted the undergrowth, and butterflies danced on the gentle breeze. Despite her mother's warning, she found herself slowing her pace to admire the wonders of nature. Unbeknownst to the innocent child, a sly and hungry wolf had caught her scent on the wind. But with gleaming eyes and a rumbling stomach, he crept through the shadows, watching the little girl in her red cloak. The wolf's mind raced with wicked thoughts as he plotted how to make a meal of both the child and her grandmother. Suddenly, the wolf stepped out onto the path, startling Little Red Riding Hood. "Good day, little girl," he said in a voice as smooth as honey. "Where might you be going on this fine morning?" The girl, taught never to be rude, replied politely, "I'm on my way to visit my grandmother, who is ill." The cunning wolf, seeing an opportunity, suggested, "Why, what a coincidence. I was just heading in that direction myself. Perhaps we could walk together." Little Red Riding Hood, in her innocence, saw no harm in this, and agreed. As they walked, the wolf cunningly asked where her grandmother lived. "Oh, just beyond the old oak tree." In the little cottage with the red shutters, Little Red Riding Hood answered, not realizing the danger of her words. The wolf's mouth watered at the thought of his upcoming feast, but he knew he had to act quickly and cleverly. Pointing to a patch of beautiful flowers just off the path, the wolf said, "Look at those lovely blossoms. I'm sure your grandmother would adore a bouquet. Why don't you pick some while I go on ahead?" Little Red Riding Hood, enchanted by the idea, readily agreed, forgetting her mother's warning about staying on the path. As the little girl busied herself gathering flowers, the wolf raced ahead to grandmother's cottage. His paws pounded the earth, and his wicked grin grew wider with each step. Upon reaching the quaint little house, he knocked on the door, imitating Little Red Riding Hood's sweet voice. The frail old woman, thinking it was her beloved granddaughter, called out, "Come in, my dear. The door is unlatched." Without hesitation, the wolf burst in, his eyes gleaming with malice. Poor grandmother barely had time to gasp before the wolf gobbled her up in one swift gulp. Pleased with himself, the wolf donned grandmother's nightcap and climbed into her bed, pulling the covers up to his snout. He waited with bated breath for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive, his stomach growling in anticipation of his second course. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood had finished gathering her bouquet and realized how much time had passed. Hurrying along the path, she finally reached her grandmother's cottage. Noticing the door ajar, she called out, "Grandmother, I've brought you some treats to make you feel better." As she entered the dim cottage, Little Red Riding Hood sensed something was amiss. Approaching the bed where her grandmother lay, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. "My grandmother," she said hesitantly, "what big ears you have." The wolf, trying to maintain his disguise, replied in a high-pitched voice, "All the better to hear you with." My dear Little Red Riding Hood, growing more suspicious, continued, "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have." The wolf, his patience wearing thin, answered, "All the better to see you with, my child." Finally, Little Red Riding Hood exclaimed, "Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have." At this, the wolf could contain himself no longer. He leaped from the bed, snarling, "All the better to eat you with," and lunged at the terrified girl. Little Red Riding Hood's scream echoed through the forest, catching the attention of a nearby woodcutter. The brave man, axe in hand, rushed towards the sound of distress. Bursting through the cottage door, he found the wolf attempting to devour the poor child. Without hesitation, the woodcutter swung his axe, striking the wolf and saving Little Red Riding Hood from a terrible fate. As the wolf lay defeated, the woodcutter carefully cut open its belly. Freeing grandmother, who had miraculously survived her ordeal. Tears of joy and relief flowed as Little Red Riding Hood embraced her grandmother, grateful for their narrow escape. The woodcutter helped them clean up the cottage and ensured they were safe before bidding them farewell. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the forest, Little Red Riding Hood knew it was time to return home. She hugged her grandmother tightly, promising to visit again soon, this time staying firmly on the path as her mother had instructed. The journey home was filled with reflection for Little Red Riding Hood. She realized the importance of heeding her mother's warnings and the dangers of trusting strangers, no matter how charming they might seem. The experience had taught her valuable lessons about caution and obedience. Upon reaching her village, Little Red Riding Hood ran into her mother's arms, recounting her harrowing adventure. Her mother listened with a mixture of horror and relief, thankful that her daughter had returned safely. That night, as Little Red Riding Hood lay in her bed, she made a solemn vow to always listen to her mother's advice and to be more cautious in her future adventures. From that day forward, Little Red Riding Hood's tale spread throughout the land, serving as a reminder to children everywhere about the importance of following instructions and being wary of strangers. And though she continued to wear her beloved red cloak, Little Red Riding Hood carried with her a new wisdom that would guide her for the rest of her days.